This episode is brought to you by Ninja RMM, the easiest RMM you will ever use. Ninja offers easy-to-use remote monitoring and management tailored to your needs as an MSP or IT professional, with a full range of features, all within a single pane of glass. Ninja is trusted by over 2,000 partners across the globe and was built to scale up as fast as your business requires. Visit ninjarmm.com/TubbTalk to sign up to a free trial and become an IT ninja today.
You're listening to TubbTalk, the podcast for IT business owners, with our featured conversation with Richard Tubb and Jon Honeyball of Woodleyside IT. My name's Jeff Nicholson, and this podcast is all about helping you grow your IT business. In this episode, Richard talks with Jon Honeyball, CEO of IT consultancy Woodleyside and contributing editor to PCPro Magazine. You'll hear how Jon got started in IT journalism, what Woodleyside does for its clients, and what he thinks about modern technology. This episode was recorded between Richard at home in Newcastle and Jon at his office in Huntington, Cambridgeshire. And now, without further ado, here's Richard Tubb talking with Jon Honeyball.
Hey folks, Richard Tubb here, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. He's somebody I've looked up to throughout my career in IT, and I'll admit it, he's a bit of a personal tech hero of mine. Jon Honeyball has been the contributing editor at PCPro Magazine since 1994. His monthly real-world computing column is a must-read for anyone who works in the IT industry, as he covers what's right and what's wrong with the latest small business technology solutions. Jon is also the CEO of Woodleyside IT, a privately held consulting company based in Huntington, Cambridgeshire in England. Woodleyside specialise in IT consultancy, future-proofing, strategic direction, product evaluation, and hiring and firing. And I'm going to talk a lot more to Jon about that. Jon, what an honour it is to have you here as a guest on the podcast.
Oh, heavens above, this is all very embarrassing, yes.
There's going to be plenty more moments when I make you blush during this podcast, I will, but thank you up front for all the fantastic content that you put out over the years. I really appreciate it.
Well, that's very kind, and it's, you know, writing this sort of stuff for so many years, you tend not to get nice emails. You tend to get the, I read your column, and you are absolutely god-awful wrong, and how dare you, and I think product X is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and you're an idiot for thinking otherwise. And all you can do is sort of sigh and politely reply and say thank you so much for your feedback. But no, I mean, yes, it's very kind of you, so I do appreciate it.
Well, now let's start with PCPro, actually. Let's start with the writing. So I've been a reader of PCPro Magazine since its early days. Actually, you and I chatted before we came on air, and I said I can actually remember you being a contributor to a publication before that, Windows Magazine.
Well, actually, I actually started my writing in 1990 with a fortnightly magazine that's no longer around called PC User. Ah. And PC User was a great thing because it was more frequent than a monthly, but it wasn't so sort of daily news oriented like the sort of the daily news titles at the time. So I had time for real articles and so forth. And it was great fun. It was edited by Chris Long, who's still around and a good mate. And it had a really sort of fun, slightly sort of pirate kind of feel to it in a sense. The back page column was sort of the latest sort of gossip and scandal of what they'd heard and, you know, and what had gone wrong on press events and who had said what about whom and all this sort of stuff. And it had a real good community feel to it. And I loved it. It was a really good read and I really looked forward to it. So being the nerd that I was, I started sort of writing in and saying, this article is rubbish because you haven't taken this into account, or you really can't believe that that's going to happen, or, you know, stuff like this. And I quite frequently got the letter of the month, the letter of the issue, because it was fortnight, the letter of the fortnight prize, which was supposed to be a book token. And for some strange reason, they never turned up in the post. So I got the prize, but nothing ever happened. And then completely out of the blue, I had a phone call, and it was Chris Long on the phone, editor of PC User. And it was like, hi. I was like, oh, gosh, wow, Chris Long on the phone. And he said, would you like to come down and have lunch? And I said, Sure, why not? So I trundled down to Farringdon area where the editorial offices were. And we went and had lunch, and I sort of met the editorial team, which looked complete chaos, as all editorial offices do. And we went out for lunch, and we were sort of halfway through the dessert, and Chris said, and by the way, I need the first one by the end of next week. And I said, somewhat perplexed, the first what? He said, well, you know all about this Windows stuff, so I want you to write a 3-page column for us every issue. And it was like, you've got to be completely kidding. I'd never written anything. I was dreadful at English at school. C at O-level kind of thing. I kind of scraped my way through. And it was like, holy crap, I've now got to write 3 pages of publication stuff about Windows. How on earth am I going to do that? And Chris's advice was, just write the sort of stuff you've been writing in these very interesting emails to me, and it will be fine. I wrote the first one and sent it in by fax, which went down like a lead balloon in the PC User editorial office. And I had a note from Chris saying, you really need to get a modem and get on this thing called KIX, which those of us who have been around a long time will remember, Computer Link Information Exchange, which was kind of before the internet really happened. So it was a dial-up bulletin board thing here in the UK, akin to the Well in San Francisco. In fact, very much similar, cozy software base behind it. And so I got onto that, and then, the next column, I actually emailed him my copy, which was like, wow. So that's how I got into it, and that was about 1990, and PC User did a redesign at the time to a more glossy format. And I got the first ever PC User Gold Award issued to a wonderful piece of software for a company down in West London area called Threads that did a program called Organizer. And Threads Organizer looked like a Filofax on screen.
Yeah.
But the really clever bit was you could cross-link things between pages. You could join up and then walk up and down the link. And I got to know the guys down there, and Gary Lavelle was the chief programmer. He was one of the first employees of Microsoft UK. And then they managed to get themselves sold off to Lotus, and it became Lotus Organizer and stuff. But anyway, that was the early days then. Then I got tempted to go over and write for Computer Buyer at Dennis Publishing. And then I met some people there. Bear in mind, this was not my full-time job. This was sort of something I did kind of evenings and weekends and stuff. And over at Dennis, I met Felix, who was quite a character and is much, much missed. Computer Buyer was doing very well. It was kind of a license of the American Computer Buyer title at the time. Back in the days, this is back in the days when paper adverts actually meant something, and rather than today where everything's on the web. And we came up with this idea to do a Windows magazine. And we did this thing called Windows Magazine, and it was great. We did it for about 2 years. And I ended up being the first ever Windows NT columnist in the world, which was really scary and spooky. But it gave me a real sort of feel for having a sandpit in which I could rant and rave. And then we took the very hard but ultimately correct decision to basically relaunch Windows Magazine as PC Pro. And we took the idea of the opinion columns and turned that into the real world columns of PC User. Of PC Pro. And I helped identify some keen argumentative mates on KIX who I thought had a good opinion. So people like Steve Cassidy and so forth, and Davey Winder for security and so forth. And basically we sort of launched this ship called PC Pro. We had a lot of competition because ZDNet brought their titles into the UK in the mid-90s and spent a huge amount of money on them to do PC Magazine. And that failed, and we've basically ended up as the last ship standing, as it were, in the serious IT SME space journal kind of thing. And so I've written RWC columns for every 200 and whatever we are now, 280 something months ever since. And since about issue 60 or so, I think, I've done the back page column, which is another sort of area where I can sit and rant and rave. So that's kind of the PC Pro kind of angle. And I just do it every month, and whatever has tickled my fancy or annoyed me or whatever gets thrown into my column.
Yeah, and I would say, I would go as far, well, two observations. Firstly, PC Pro is the only magazine that I know that I pick up and flick straight to the back page.
Oh, you're too kind.
So that's a testament to your writing there. And I would say about the real world columns, real world computing columns, it's actually a predecessor to the podcasts and things that we have now. I mean, you and I were just chatting before we came on air, and I said the feedback I get from people who listen to this podcast is they enjoy feeling as though they're almost eavesdropping on a conversation between a couple of friends in a very polite way. I get the feeling with the real world computing columns that it is a conversation. You know, it feels as though yourself and Steve and others are speaking to the reader, and you're, just going over what's in your mind at the moment. So, and I think that's the key to longevity of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're too stuffy, then people get bored and switch off and don't come back again. If you're too sort of stupid and irreverent, people won't take you seriously. It's a very fine balance. I'm in no way suggesting I'm getting it right. It's just they haven't fired me yet. So kind of, after 280 or so months of doing this, I've either that or everyone's got used to me being stuck in a groove and put up with my foibles and quirks. So I don't know. It's just...
I think I know which one it is.
I mean, I certainly would never consider myself to be a professional journalist or talented writer or whatever. I did end up being... shortlisted for the PPA Columnist of the Year, and I lost against Jeremy Clarkson a few years ago. But I just take the view that I can't start writing the column until I know what the stories are that I'm going to say. So it really is a train of thought brain dump. And I kind of start, and I've got a list of topic and ideas and stuff, and I just keep writing until I hit the magic 2,700 words, and things that got in, and things that didn't might come back next month or not, or whatever, because these things move on, and issues I might have this month may be resolved next month. And you can't just keep harping on about something. So yeah, it's really is just a case of trying to have a conversation, trying to explain it, trying to put a position. The other thing that's also worked very well for RWC is that we don't have to agree with each other. In fact, it's actually a good thing if we don't agree with each other. Yeah. And we also don't even have to agree with ourselves. What I mean by that is sometimes you take a position, take a point of view and argue from that point of view. And it was an old meme from the Kicks days that you really know a subject when you can argue it from one position for 15 minutes and then authoritatively argue it from the opposite position for another 15 minutes. Because rarely is anything completely black and white or clear cut or whatever. There's always pros and cons. There's always reasons why stuff was done, even if they turn out to be bad reasons or bad outcomes. So sometimes I'll argue something, from a position that I might not necessarily agree with myself, but it's a point of view.
Yes.
And I kind of take the view that my job there is to make a contention or make a position or talk about something. And I want the reader to come away thinking, yeah, I understood something. I understood it and I learned something from that. I might not agree, but I understand why he said what he did.
Yeah. And
if I can do that, then I think I have fulfilled my remit.
I absolutely agree. And certainly, I'm a huge fan of your writing, as I am most of the real world columnists. In fact, I want to throw a quote out there. I said I'd make you blush a lot during this, John. Another tech writer I hugely respect, and in fact, another PCPro contributor, Paul Ockenden, said of you, "I wish I could write as well, as knowledgeably, and as engagingly as John does." That's quite a compliment, I think. So I know
that's very kind of him. Yes.
I know you say that you're not a trained writer or anything like that, but I think it connects with the audience. So.
Well, that's what you've got to try and do, and it seems to work. And I don't know why, but that's I just kind of do more of the same, really.
Yeah. So. One of the perks of having a podcast like this, where I can bring on my tech and business heroes like yourself, John, is that I get to get a bit of free consultancy.
Okay.
That's actually the key to it. So I'll share with you, as a long-time PC Pro reader, one of my professional bucket list goals is to have an article published in PC Pro. And in fact, my buddy Ian Thornton-Trump managed it a few months ago, and I was really pleased for him. I was wildly jealous. But any tips for me on achieving that goal, John? What does it look like?
Oh, goodness me. Well, firstly, it's not up to me. So you can start throwing the £5 notes in my direction, but honestly, it won't help. The person who decides all of that is Tim Danton, the editor, and get in contact with him. He is always looking for content, interesting stuff, because that's his job. That's what it's all about. We do have a guest columnist column in RWC. So, if you've got something that would fit into that, talking about something. You can't just sort of waffle on about world peace and hunger, important though they are. You've got to have something, a story to say. If you've got a story to say that will fit into that remit and is interesting, then send it to Tim, and I know for certain he will take it seriously.
Oh, well, bless you for that advice. And I know the other reason, seriously, that I mention that up front is when I've shared that bucket list goal of mine, and it's a vanity goal, nothing more, when I share that with other people, there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast who are bloggers, who are aspiring writers in their own right. And actually, what's to stop anybody getting in touch with the editor of any magazine?
Absolutely. You write to them, write to me, and I'll forward it on. If you don't know, if you're somebody that knows me, then write. It takes me all of 10 seconds to forward an email. I'm more than happy to do so. I feel it's part of my job to do that. I'm one of the faces of the magazine. My email address, or one of my email addresses, has been on the column, every column for 280 something months. So I'm not exactly difficult to get hold of. And if you've got something or something's important, either it will end up as a letter in the next issue, or there's potential for a column space or something.
Yeah,
who knows?
Thank you for that. Now, let's turn this from my personal coaching and bucket list achieving podcast to talking business. You're, as well as PC Pro contributor, you're also the CEO of Woodleyside.
Yep.
This is a business you founded in 1985.
Goodness me. No, not quite. 1990.
1990. So let's rewind to 1990.
Right.
How did you get started working for yourself?
Okay, well, actually, you kind of have to go back into my teenage years, unfortunately. I was a pretty talented musician, pianist, and I studied as a classical pianist to a very high level. I was in the National Youth Orchestra for 5-6 years. I studied with people like Pierre Boulez and Kirill Kondrashin, and my piano tutor was Maria Curcio in London, who was the only pupil of Artur Schnabel. So if you know classical piano world, you'll know those names. I decided at the age of 16, 17, I didn't want to be a concert pianist. I still have my Steinway in the next room, but I decided I didn't want to do that. I was much more interested in how things worked. So, I helped my dad service the car every week, the 2 cars every weekend, because they were old wrecks, and we needed to service them most weekends to get them through the next week. And I was really fascinated by broadcast engineering and recording. So the choice at 18 really was, do I go to the BBC and become a trainee engineer? Because back then the BBC still had a very strong internal training regime. And I had an exceptionally good careers advisor at school who came up with information about a very small course at the University of Guildford attached to the music department called the Tonmeister course, which at the time was the only broadcast engineering, sound recording and music course in the UK. Nowadays, you can go and do music technology most anywhere. And there's been an absolutely incredible democratization of that space as the prices of the technology has just collapsed. But back then, there was one degree course, and I think there were 5 of us on my year. It was a very small department. And I went there, and as part of that, we had hooks with various organizations for which we were effectively very cheap expert listeners, as you knew what we were listening to, and we were students. Therefore, £4.50 and a packet of Smarties, and you'll go somewhere for the day and tell them what you thought of stuff. So I started doing an awful lot of listening tests, which involved a lot of the consumer organizations around Europe. And my industrial year, I worked for a guy in North London called Angus Mackenzie, who had a lab at his house. And he was a legend in radio and broadcast. He actually had a column in Hi-Fi News and Record Review about radio. And he was taken very, very seriously by the BBC. And he was an amateur radio expert. And we did a whole technical book for the Radio Society of Great Britain called The Buyer's Guide to Amateur Radio. Oh, this is all going to be 33 years ago or something. But that got me heavily into computer control of technical instrumentation. Hewlett-Packard, Brill & Kerr, so forth. Marconi. We had a fantastic new prototype Marconi Spectrum, RF spectrum analyzer at the time that I spent most of my year debugging before it came on sale. And I went back to university for my final year, and I had an offer to go and join Consumers Association, which to help set up their audio video telecoms lab in Harpenden, which I did with another good friend who also had worked for Angus. And after 3 years of doing that, I had got involved in international computer testing for them. And I was getting a bit tired of it. Windows 2 was still very big. I had Windows 2. I'd spent the 450 quid on the Windows 2 software development kit and then the 400 quid on the C compiler, because back then that's how much it cost. And then you open the package and realize that it was complete gobbledygook and told you nothing. So you then went and bought your copy of Petzold's Programming Windows book, which was the Bible. And he taught you how to write a make file in a text editor and stuff. It was all very much roll it yourself. But I absorbed his book, and I found it completely fascinating as how a non-preemptive multitasking operating system, a graphical operating system worked, and how all the message passing worked, and all of this sort of stuff. And I went out, and, as I said, and I bought the software development kit and C and a decent one of the very first 386 20 megahertz computers that came on the market, which was called the Samsung S800. And I remember it had slots on the motherboard for 8 megabytes of RAM. And it had a proprietary expansion slot into which you could slot another 8 megabytes of RAM. So I had done the unheard of thing, which was I contacted Samsung and said, well, I filled it with 8 meg. Where do I buy the expansion card from? And they came back and rather sheepishly told me that they hadn't actually made any. They didn't think anyone was actually going to be able to afford the 9 to 16 megabytes of RAM. So I got quite upset with them. And I then went and bought the 387 Masco processor for it because I was doing a lot of stuff with vectors for reasons I'll come back to in a moment. And that didn't work either. So I got onto Samsung and I said, why can't I see my 700 quid 387 processor in this box? And they said, it needs a firmware update. So I remember driving down to Southwest London, and they gave me some EPROMs on some anti-static foam and plugged them in, and my 387 came alive. And anyway, I was absolutely fascinated by it, and I thought OS2 was on a hiding to nowhere. I thought it wasn't going to work. It was the wrong thing at the wrong time for reasons we can go through. It probably requires beer between us to do that. But at the time, I thought OS2 286, OS2 386 wasn't going to provide what the industry needed at the time, and that Windows 3 that was coming was. And I was fascinated by, if you remember, that weird thing called Windows 2 386, which basically...
I don't. I think my first exposure was Windows 3.
Okay.
Windows 3.11, is that Windows for Workgroups, I believe?
Yeah. Okay, so this was Windows 2, but running on a 32-bit 386 kind of quasi-virtualized environment. So you could actually run DOS programs preemptively multitasking, which was really, really cool. And I thought, this is where things are going to go. This is what it's going to be about. And I was bored with what I was doing at the lab, because I kind of done it all, been there, done that for a number of years, and I was very good at it, even though I say it myself. But I decided I wanted to spread my wings and do other stuff. My parents had a consultancy company, actually, strangely enough, called Woodleyside Consultants Limited. And my dad was a top international management consultant working for people like Guinness in Dublin, Irish distillers, all sorts of people. He was on the Clegg Commission, and he looked after the ambulance side of the Clegg Commission. He was the only person who ran the Armed Forces Pay Review and so forth. It was a fabulous guy, much missed. And so I basically joined the family firm at 25 because Mum did the accounts, and I came with to do a deal with my mum and dad, which was I would work for 4 months and cover my costs for the year, and then I could go off and do all my researchy bits for the other 8 months of the year. And you can imagine what happened. I got to month 5 and the work was still coming in, and I didn't stop. And then after about 6 months, I realized I was learning a lot more and having far more fun doing the work out there than I was sitting at home programming C and Windows. So to cut a long story short, I launched myself out as kind of like a Windows expert, which is at the same time got me into PC User, writing about Windows every 2 weeks and all the inner guts of what was going on and what people needed to know. And I made a lot of money in the City of London getting fonts to work. Because
it was important back then, yeah. Well,
this. I know this sounds completely pathetic these days, but before we had TrueType, before we had Adobe Type Manager, LaserJets had basically bitmap fonts.
Yes.
The LaserJet 2 was the workhorse of business, and it had bitmap fonts, and you could get font cartridges you plugged in the front, and they were awful because they would only have a certain number of sizes and only a small number of typefaces. But if you even had one of those, everything went completely pants on screen because you didn't have screen fonts.
Yeah.
And I discovered how to generate and install soft fonts for Windows 3 and into the LaserJet 2 printer driver. Because strangely enough, like you wouldn't believe it today, there was a hidden menu in the LaserJet 2 printer driver, which if you knew where to click, opened up a whole bit where you could join up the soft fonts you generated. So if you took splined soft fonts and then generated the bitmaps, that's where the maths coprocessor came in handy, because you were doing curve bitmap handling. And I made a shed load of money for a few years in London, just getting things to appear on screen as they would print out. And people thought this was a miracle. People thought I walked on water. It was hilarious. And this was really important because Excel was out at the time, in about 87-ish or so on Windows 2. Word for Windows shipped in December 1989. God, I'm so sad I remember this. And it was £449 per seat at the time, and came on a lot of floppy disks with a hardbound manual, I remember. But that ran on Windows 2, and then Windows 3 came out in April 1990. And then from there, the whole thing sort of rolled forward, and I was really, really busy. Then this whole Windows NT thing happened in 1992, which was then Windows, but with a proper plumbing underneath it, a proper kernel, proper microkernel. And proper file system. This was NTFS. This was amazing. And I was right inside it. I was living and breathing it. And I was really busy at the time helping businesses make sense of this and deploy it and design. How are they going to change their networks? And what was this TCP/IP thing? Because, again, laughable though it may seem today, there was an awful lot of NetWare 2.2 out there, which was running on IPX SPX, which didn't scale. It was horrible. It was fine at the time, but it was a real mess. And here we now had a server with a graphical user interface. Wow. And it was a multi-core. It was multi-CPU supporting and cross-platform. It was miraculous. I'm still trying to find a video of the original July the 5th, Monday, July the 5th, or was it Monday, July the 4th? The Monday morning keynote at the 1992 first ever Professional Developers Conference that was held at Moscone Center in San Francisco. And I went to it as press. And Dave Cutler came on. I mean, there was a waffle from Bill Gates to start off with. And then Cutler comes on stage, and there were 5,000 developers there who had paid a lot of money to go and see Cutler and see an operating system they'd never seen before. There had been no screenshots. There had been no information other than this was Cutler does Windows. And I remember he came on stage, and the clapping and hollering stopped, and he stood there and he looked out at the audience and he said, this is from my memory from a long time ago, he said, "This is a proper operating system." And the whole place erupted. Anyway, I've gone a bit sideways. So I was spending the 90s doing an awful lot of Windows stuff in London, and that got me into sort of network consultancy and advising people what they should do. And then, of course, more things arrived. SQL Server came in off OS2. SQL Server was actually on OS2.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay. Yep. I'd done a prototype HR system for Guinness in Dublin, which used Access 1 as the front end against SQL Server on the back end. And I was very proud. There was only about 12 pages of code in the whole thing because I used the whole object model for click-through, and it was time independent. You could move time around and see what would happen to all different departments and how the workload would be and how many staff you had and stuff. It was really cool. I learned a huge amount from a guy I was working there who ended up the CTO of Diageo. So I was doing all this sort of stuff, and it was great fun. And I was writing for PC User and then into Windows Mag. I was on press trips. I was meeting Bill. I was meeting Steve Jobs. I was, wow, this was really rock and roll and fun. And then more things came in. So we had Exchange Server arrive. Exchange Server 4 was the first version. Quite how they got to 4, I'm not sure. I remember having lunch with Brad Silverberg, who was then the senior vice president in charge of Windows 95, 98. And we went out to lunch, and he told me we've just delayed the release of Exchange Server by 9 months. I said, why? He said, because we deployed it on site yesterday. It's gone very badly. So, this was Microsoft dog fooding in the best traditions. So I had these wonderful contacts with really interesting people, and a lot of people who I've got lifelong friends to this day. And then we had Exchange Server. Then we had more stuff come into what became called back office.
Yes.
And then my next sort of career move was sort of addition to what I did was we set up something called the Back Office User Group, which was an independent thing, but we hosted it at Microsoft in Reading every 6 weeks, I think it was 6 to 8 weeks, a whole day, and we had both of the main projection rooms together. You could take the wall down in the middle, and the place was filled. And I gave the keynote and found the speakers and the topics and persuaded people inside Microsoft to come along and so forth. And that was great fun. And I was chair of the Back Office User Group for about 5 years or so. Learned a huge amount from that. And at this point, we'd gone into 2000s. Windows 2000 Active Directory had arrived. And I was very busy helping people decide how they were going to deploy Active Directory on a SME through to global basis, because it was all new for everybody, unless you'd had Banyan Vines, of course, because Banyan Vines did that sort of directory. And let's not suggest for a moment that there is much similarity between Active Directory and Banyan Vines, despite the fact it was the same guy who was the programmer for both of them. Microsoft bought the head of Banyan Vines and he ran them, the Windows 2000 Active Directory, and also the Cairo work was all his. So that takes us into the sort of the 2000s Active Directory and so forth. I'm getting busier and busier because I'm still doing product testing stuff for the various clients, and I'm finding this is turning into a long, boring rant. I do.
It's not. No, I could actually listen to this all day, and I can tell you up front, John, I'm not alone.
Okay.
People are going to be loving.
Please wave at me over the video camera or put your fingers down your throat.
Carry on, John.
Anyway, so we got into the 2000s, big networks, and I felt I was not able to understand all of it anymore. There was this wonderful sort of technological summer in the late 1990s, the NT4 server, starting of back office, starting of Active Directory, where you really could have a very strong grasp of all of the components that went into that platform. But as the platform grew and got more and more complicated and more stuff coming out, I felt I was kind of losing grip on what was going on at a code level. I didn't feel I could sit down and actually have an argument with somebody about bugs inside Active Directory anymore, or the systems management stuff. I did actually go over to Redmond for 3 weeks or so and helped them design the small business version of systems management server.
Yes.
The one that, because the system management server existed as a sort of a corporate thing, and it existed as an on-premise single site thing. And I said, there's a huge market out there for people who want to basically spend all day in bed, but manage multiple small businesses.
There absolutely is. And I was one of them. I deployed that.
So the version that came out, I persuaded Kirill, who was the head of that group, who then went off to become CTO of, I think he went off to VMware. But Kirill was head of the management stuff. Kirill, and I can't remember his surname, a Russian guy, very, very bright, nice guy. And I persuaded him that what we needed was some way of rolling up multiple sites into some sort of managed overview such that you could then provide a service provision out. It's kind of like early days of the cloud in a way. You could do a service provision and actually fix things on the sites of your customers before they even realized that a problem had happened.
Well, it was a precursor. I mean, my niche is the managed service provider industry. So nowadays, MSPs who are predominantly listening to this, they're going to be very familiar with RMM tools, remote monitoring and maintenance tools such as SolarWinds and Kaseya and others. This was a predecessor almost, but from Microsoft.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, they took it and ran it, and it was successful, and they sold quite a lot of it. And, I persuaded some mates to actually go off and set up little service businesses around that. And they made, good money and stayed in bed all day because you could stay in bed with your laptop and actually do all of this. I think the more grown-up ones did actually put some clothes on. But, it was a new style of model, and it was a precursor to sort of cloud-based and rolled up management console stuff, which is obviously so hugely important today. So anyway, I felt I was kind of losing, not losing my touch, that sounds wrong, but losing the ability. There wasn't enough time in the day to learn all of these things. And so my consultancy went kind of upstairs. I became very well known as the person who would sit there and just say, why? Or no? Or show me, prove it, or whatever. And so I ended up doing a lot of sort of C-level, as today we would call C-level consultancy, where I'll get brought in to sort of shout at people and point out the weaknesses of what they were doing and give them ideas as to what they could do better and so forth. And that was, it was a slight more direction, but I had the track record of chairing the back office user group and so forth and the press angle and stuff. And I could, genuinely turn up and add value. And that was great fun. And I still do that. I mean, last week I spent all morning with a startup company who's working on a very interesting technical problem, which I think is going to make them an awful lot of money. But in a 2.5 hour meeting, I highlighted a whole bunch of stuff they hadn't even started thinking about.
Yeah. And
which they've now gone, gosh, yes, right. And I'm very good at challenging these sort of preconceptions that people have and the assumptions they've made in their design. Because fundamentally, if you go all the way back, what I've been really interested in is understanding how things worked. The reason I wanted to get into broadcast engineering was not because I wanted to go off and record things. I was fascinated by how these huge mixing desks worked and what all those knobs did. What did they do? What happened if you turn? What happened on a video mixing desk by Grass Valley? How did this actually work? What was the plumbing? What was the? And it's that kind of visualization and that sort of deconstruction, analysis, and reconstruction is kind of what I do, what I've always done, and that's what underlies everything. So I can look at a phone. I've got an iPhone, whatever this is, 8 Plus or whatever, and I need in my head to come up with a view about how good is this, but you can't just say, well, I like it. It's quite nice. It's by Apple. It's purple. You have to be able to say, well, the screen is this good for these reasons. The battery life is good for those reasons. The performance is good for these reasons. The on-screen keyboard has got these problems. And actually then sort of deconstruct the whole thing right down to the component pieces and then build up a model of what makes a great smartphone and then determine whether this is any good or not. So that's kind of what the lab does. And in Huntingdon, we have our lab and staff, and we probably handle about 400 or 500 pieces of stuff a year. So we handle just about every laptop that goes on sale, every tablet that goes on sale worldwide, smartphone stuff, 4K TV, down into tricky areas like antivirus and security software, audio products. We have an IEC listening room, IEC viewing room space, so known calibrated acoustics. And we are now what's called ISO 17025, which is a externally audited quality control process for laboratories. And in fact, we actually had our annual shakeout last week, 2 days of them turning up, and they can go through anything down to the smallest cell in Excel or methodology or whatever, and ask us to explain, justify, show the calibration routines, methodology, who is trained to do this and why, and what their expertise is. And it's really, really comprehensive. So we have a whole set of methodologies, but essentially what the lab does is you can give us something and we can sort of deconstruct it down, work out how good all of it is, and put it all back together again. So quite a lot of the consultancy that I'm doing these days is almost at a product level, which is what makes a good widget. And the manufacturer may be working on one or doing some R&D into an area or writing some software for one or something. And they just really do desperately need an out-of-the-box view, an independent view. So many times over the last 30 years, I've seen software developments that's gone off the rails because the team is so inward-looking. They never think of it from the outside. They never think, how the hell is the user going to use this? What's the end point here? And everyone gets lost in the micro detail and even worse, especially in a larger corporation. And I will single out Microsoft as an example here, where they get lost in the politics. Is this the in product at the moment? Is this the cute thing to do? And think that good products have failed to come to market. Or actually, kind of even worse, bad products have come to market simply for all the wrong reasons. And if I was going to take Microsoft, and I'm not singling Microsoft out as being particularly bad here, you could find exactly the same for Cisco, exactly the same for HP, exactly the same for Lotus, exactly the same for IBM. It is a trait of particularly large organizations. So if you were to take something like data storage, file storage, your day-to-day unstructured stuff. Obviously, structured stuff goes really nicely into SQL Server, so we'll put that to one side, or Oracle, or whatever. But your unstructured stuff that organizations live on. Now, let's go all the way back to 1990, we had FAT16 file system.
Yes.
Then we had FAT32. And let's go down that spread, we now have exFAT, okay? But then along comes Windows NT and we have NTFS. Great filing system. In fact, if you can ever find a copy of it, there is an excellent, super nerdy book by a lady called Helen Custer called Inside the Windows NTFS File System, which you really ought to read because it's quite a thick paperback book all about the internal structures of NTFS, written in 1992.
We should have to track that down and make sure it's in the show notes.
I'm pretty sure it's not available, it's certainly not in print. It was from Microsoft Press. Yeah. It won't be in print, but you might find it on eBay or something. And it's a great little read as to the thinking process that went into what they wanted to do and the problems they were trying to solve. And NTFS has been hugely successful all the way for years and years and years. And you think of the trillions of bytes of data that's held on NTFS around the world. Anyway, so after that we had structured storage server side was going to come out in NT 3.51. That got canned. Then we had the Cairo object file system. That got canned. That never came to market. Then we had a complete horror of something that you will remember from Exchange Server 4 and 5 called Drive M.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, where you could actually mount a drive letter into your Exchange Server store. I don't know what these guys and girls were smoking, but my God, it was some strong stuff. Because if you ever went and did check disk against it, you wiped out your Exchange Server store. So what comes after that? Well, we then have variations of Drive M. We then have SharePoint Server Storage. Oh my God, as in OneDrive for Business. Ugh. So there's a OneDrive for Business client for Mac that doesn't support the Mac file system, the Mac file system character set. Duh. We then had the whole WinFS debacle, which, was a huge amount of energy and work and never came to anything. And you do wonder in these sort of organizations whether it's sort of pet projects that run amok, and some of them escape and some of them don't. And you wonder where the real sort of long-term strategic flow is what I'm coming back to. So software companies get completely locked into their own little visions of reality. And very often it's refreshing to have an idiot like me come along, sit there and basically say, why? What? Sorry, run that by me. How? What are you doing? Really? And either they sort of have light bulb moments and get it and suddenly realize that they've been doing really, really stupid assumptions, or they get very angry. That can be quite amusing too. And sometimes you just have to walk from it because they are so far up their own bottom that they're never going to see the light of day. And there's one particular project I've been involved in over the last year or so that frankly drove me nuts. And in the end, I had to walk away from it because they just didn't get it, But those that do, it's fabulous. You really feel...
Let's talk about that for a minute, actually, John, because we talked about your favourite tech. We've talked about tech that's just bloody awful. We've got a mutual friend, Jane Lee, who works in PR, now retired. Jane told me that you're really well respected and liked within the PR and the media community, and obviously can see that. How do you approach telling a company that their product, essentially their baby, is ugly? How do you do that?
Well, it kind of depends upon how the conversation has started. Sometimes you can have the CEO contact me and say, could you come along and have a look? And you then go along, and then it's kind of like open warfare from day one, because the CEO doesn't believe that the CTO knows what his team is doing. Or the CFO is really worried about how much money they're spending and it's not working. Or the CEO is really worried about the support cost or something, yeah? And at the end of the day, you just basically have to tell it to them straight. This is pig ugly. It doesn't work. It's completely unintuitive. And what are you doing? And either they will listen and take note, or they'll throw you out the door. Well, okay. Shit happens. There is absolutely no point in saying, well, it's really quite nice, but, or just a little suggestion maybe you could think of maybe trying something. No, you just have to, two barrels of the shotgun, because there is never enough time to be polite about this. You've just got to give it to them straight, back it up with reasons why, back it up with examples of what it's not doing right, try to get them to see the light. If you can, great. If you can't, walk away and send the invoice in. My job is not there to be nice to people. My job is there to tell them what I think, right? And there's John's famous 2 rules of consultancy, which is you charge like a wounded rhino. And the other one is that if you're not embarrassed by the invoice, it's not enough. So on that basis...
That's gold right there. We'll make sure that's a quotable for this episode.
And so from that point of view, you're in for a day. So you're going to charge as much as possible. But that also means, because they might not invite you back, they might decide you're way too hot to handle. And if you're going to put all the sort of intellectual and emotional energy into doing this and driving halfway across Europe or flying somewhere or whatever. Even a large bill doesn't actually turn out to be an awful lot once you've taken a flight out of it and 2 hotels. If you're lucky, you get them to pay for those as well. But it is incumbent upon me to go basically get, full Gale Force 10, rip this thing to pieces, work out what the component parts are, what it's doing, how it's supposed to work, what their intention is, what they were trying to achieve, then work out what the customer is probably going to want.
Yes.
Right. And then try and build a model in my head and on, sheets of A3 paper as to whether this actually lines up or not. So it's kind of like a sanity check audit. And those people that get it come out of it saying, wow, that was really, really, high bandwidth, intense, and painful.
Yeah.
Because if their product was lovely, you just sit there and say, this is great, this is fab. What are you doing? This is fab, 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 massage ego. And then walk out and they're all going to say, well, why do we bother with that? We could have been doing some work that day. We know it's fab. But the problem ones are people who believe it's fab and it's actually a crock of shit.
Yes.
It's unusable, it's unstable. It doesn't do what the customer needs.
Let's pick up on something that you said earlier on there. I know you pride yourself in understanding how the customer thinks, and you've just referred to that.
Right.
One of the quotes that I've heard you say before is, we will find, and this is about Woodleyside and yourself, we will find the things that your team overlooks, assumes, or misunderstands.
Yep.
For me, this is an area that lots of IT companies, especially IT professionals who are listening here, could learn from. How would you say you learned that skill to think how a customer thinks?
I wish there was a sort of a prescriptive list I could give you of, start here and go there, or a book to go off and read. Honestly, I've made it up as I go along. What I mean by that is you have to have sort of the personal integrity to say, I want to take this apart, and it's like watchmaking. You sort of take apart the pieces, look at the pieces, and put them back together again. So something that drives me completely nuts, for example, is you check into a hotel and you're there at the desk, and they ask you for your name. Fine. They found your record. 65 mouse clicks later, they can give you your room key. Right?
What are they clicking on there?
What are they doing? Are they doing a personal profile of me? Don't like his shirts. Shoes are a bit scruffy on a scale of 1 to. I don't know what the hell are they doing? Yeah, and why isn't it? Yes, Mr. Honeyball. Boom. Here's your room key. Fine. And so there's a number of metrics. I mean, there's some obvious things like just how often are people having to interact with something, or windows opening or closing, or going repetitively around the same thing drives me nuts. I love little bits of automation. The problem is, of course, automation these days inside a business context is very much frowned upon, because all the debacle we had with, for example, Office and unsigned macros. And I think there's been a huge swell of good thinking that was happening inside businesses there that's kind of being snuffed out, and for good reasons I get, but an unintended consequence. So how do you work this out? The answer is, do you want to sit there and do this all day? If it really does take 55 mouse clicks to check somebody into a hotel room, how many people are they checking in a day? How frequently are we giving these people new mice? Because they're going to be wearing them out. Haven't we got better things for them to do? Even if it's sat there reading the newspaper, I'd rather them do that than repetitively do the same crap all over and over and over again. And that's just one small example.
No, I think you're right. I actually see the future, again, going back to the managed service industry. I think tech is becoming so, I'm not going to say easy, that's not the right word, but consumers and businesses can deploy tech a lot easier than they used to be able to. The days of crawling under desks and plugging cables and things, that's pretty much all but gone for a lot of the IT professionals. But I see the future of the industry for managed service providers being looking at the processes within clients' businesses and saying, that's bloody stupid. That can be done more efficiently. You can save money doing that. That really irritates customers. So, you've been doing this for a while, and I think actually this is where the industry is headed.
I mean, the problem here, of course, is that if you're not careful, you'll start stepping on toes who weren't expecting it. So if you've got to be very careful with IT, that if you start stepping out of the IT role into the business process, then who the hell are you?
Yes.
And that can be very, very difficult. And people can rightly get very upset, because they'll turn around and say, well, you're mandating I should do this, but actually there's a whole bunch of complexity here you don't understand. So who the hell are you to tell me? And that is always a problem. But there is a difference here between internal process within an organization versus delivering something to a customer. If you're delivering something to a customer, then you basically put yourself in the shoes of that customer and say, what am I getting? am I happy with this? Is this going to make my business better or worse? Yeah. Is this going to tie up my staff in knots? Is it so complex I'm going to have to retrain my staff in order to do it? Am I going to have to turn my business processes around to fit within your assumptions of my business processes? And I think delivering product to end customers is quite different from working on internal processes. Because there isn't then an external customer per se.
Yes.
And I think those are quite different spaces. And you're absolutely right. The things are getting much, much easier now. I mean, I haven't run Exchange Server in years because I run it as part of Office 365. Yeah. And, I don't worry about Office 365 backing up my Exchange Server because a little miracle occurs in the cloud and it all happens. Of course, I make sure I've got local copies of it and it's all on tape as well. But nevertheless, things are very easy. The problem in that space is that it becomes very tempting to stop asking why, where, how, what the impact of this is going to be. Whole global populations can get sucked into this. If you think, I gave a speech recently to the British Computer Science Society up in Manchester on Facebook and why you are the product and why it's all too late.
Yes.
Because even if we get Facebook to start acting like something other than global sociopaths, they've still got so much data. It's going to take 2 generations. Even if we cut them off at the knees today, it will take 2 generations before that data is actually flushed out.
Yeah, the horse has already bolted, hasn't it?
It's bolted, gone over the hill and gone. And so people just will accept stuff. And that's also true in IT. People will sign up to stuff. And for all the wrong reasons. I have a huge fear for the future of NHS IT, for example, which is that as money gets more and more constrained within the NHS's budget, for all very good reasons, aging population, blah, 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 all the stuff that we all know, IT will get increasingly squeezed, and someone like Google or Microsoft will come along with a artificially cheap solution. And the minister will say, well, that looks like a bargain, and sign on the bottom line, without realizing that now all of a sudden the NHS data is residing in Arizona. And these sorts of things should matter. So yeah, I do worry about the democratization and the ease of doing stuff. And whilst I love the move to the cloud, I also have got some very deep-seated concerns about a lot of it. Because if the NSA or GCHQ really wanted to know what I had on my network in my lab, they'll turn up at 5 o'clock in the morning with some transit vans and some police, and they'll take everything out of the building with a plug on it. If they really were genuinely interested, that's not the worry I've got. It's the worry that stuff leaks, stuff gets concatenated together, gets munged and filtered and quasi-anonymized, but isn't really anonymized. And you'll end up in some great data silo somewhere, and you have no idea how that happened. Yeah. And no means whatsoever of unwinding it. And that is really quite scary.
It is a concern, and I think we could probably record a whole podcast talking just about that. I want to rewind a little bit.
Sure.
Let's talk about let's not talk about the labs, but I'd love you to, if you can, so we can include them in the show notes for the listeners, to get across some photographs of what the labs look like over there at Woodleyside, because I think
okay, I'll see what I can do. Yep.
Fabulous.
I've got some nice pretty ones when we moved in, which look very, very tiny.
Show it in its best light then.
In its best light, yes. Yeah, I can do that. It doesn't look like that now, but the problem with it now is we've got all sorts of stuff there, which I couldn't put in the photograph. So
yeah,
and I can't clear the building out. So
what's the favourite bit of tech that's come through the labs for you recently? The tech that you can talk about out there.
Give me a time frame when you say recently.
Within the last 12 months. What's a piece of tech that's excited you that you've not looked at and instinctively seen the faults or the flaws, but you've looked at and gone, for me, this is fantastic. Yeah.
I mean, it would be very sort of blasé to say, oh, I think this new Surface Pro 4 is really lovely and it's got a really nice keyboard. No, I mean, all of that stuff to me is basically repetitive plumbing. And it's derivative and it's not particularly interesting. stuff that I think has been interesting but is horribly underdeveloped. Things like the voice control of things like Amazon Alexa. Oh, mine's lit up. Go on, you're going to shout at me now, aren't you?
See, I just mentioned that I do another podcast with a friend of mine, Cole Palachuk, for a company called Ovig over in Canada, and we mention Alexa quite a lot. And so I always whisper Alexa so that she doesn't start beeping
at me.
Yeah, we've actually had complaints from listeners saying, why are you whispering? Well, that's the reason there, right there.
Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of stuff, I think, has impacted an enormous number of people in a very positive way. Yeah. It's fantastically immature. It's badly thought through. There's a whole heap of questions that aren't being answered, like that issue a few months ago, where a recording ended up in someone's inbox because the system recorded it and decided that actually you had said email it to Fred or something. And I've yet to see, maybe it has come out and I've missed it, but I have yet to see a truly credible answer from Amazon as to why that happened. And I think they're probably not prepared to open the kimono and explain why it thought what it was doing was the right thing, because that would be either very embarrassing or a competitive advantage to the other people in that space. Nevertheless, that kind of tech I think is really interesting. But, is it really that cute? I can sit here and tell a friend to turn off the kitchen lights and they'll switch off. And well, that's great. That just saves me going over there and pressing a light switch. Where I think we will get really, really transformative and really scary is technology like that.
Right, so you're showing me a little white button that's attached to your arm,
attached to my arm, and that's measuring my blood sugar level. I'm type 2 diabetic, and it's measuring my blood sugar level. In fact, I can hear with my iPhone, because the latest iPhones have actually got NFC readers in them, and I can go, boom, and it's just given me a graph of my blood sugar level this morning. This type of tech and stuff that's coming down those similar paths is truly life-changing. If you consider that a third of the population of the world will end up type 2 diabetic, and managing that is effectively now arguably the number one health issue affecting the NHS and health solutions worldwide. So monitoring this stuff, this is where tech gets really, really interesting and exciting, and where massive change and improvements are happening almost on a daily basis. And that's really interesting stuff. And I can tie it into my phone, and I can look after the data. I mean, in this particular case, the data is going off to a cloud provision from the manufacturer of this device. And do I trust them? No. But I try and keep the minimum amount of data in there. You have to be careful of this stuff. So I think the whole healthcare stuff, but the monumental downside of this is the whole health data security issue, which is as wonderful as the solutions will be, are a whole different level of terrifying on top. Because this, a data leak of your last 15 years of your health profile in real time could seriously screw your life.
Yeah.
And I don't believe, if we're talking here about an NHS that managed to have WannaCry run across its entire internal network and stomp on things, I really do worry as to who is actually competent to look after this stuff. But we have a huge need for it.
Yeah, I actually used to work for the NHS Information Authority, as it was called back then, going back sort of 20 years or whatever.
Sure.
I mean, it sort of terrified me even then, shall we say. And my gut feeling is some things have changed for the better, but some things not so much.
So, I mean, there's all this sort of stuff that's, being plumbed together. I can shout at my A-box and get it to play me something from Spotify. So music is no longer something you have to go and find an LP or a CD. You can stream it from Spotify or Tidal or whatever. This whole IP connectedness of stuff. Sky, for example, moving over almost wholly onto IP transfer. So you won't, I believe, shortly you won't even need to have a dish. This is all really interesting stuff. And it also throws into question a whole pile of previous decisions, like was DAB a good idea or not? And so this is all sort of really fun, funky stuff. I'm on the hunt at the moment for what I would consider to be credible home security firewalling hardware and software, because I think there's nothing out there that is even vaguely competent. And the same applies to the SME market. If you're a big boy, you're running Cisco and you've got staff, who's monitoring it in real time. My entire network here across 4 physical sites is Cisco Meraki, which I love dearly, but by God, it's expensive. And we need something with that kind of capability pushed down to the SME level and then pushed down into the home level. We need a complete rethink about how we deal with home security, how we deal with little Johnny in his bedroom, having got some malware on his Windows laptop, and how do we even find out and manage this? We need to be deeply scared about IoT. And the home is your castle. This box thing service should be the drawbridge into your house, and no one's looking at that seriously. And there's an almost limitless untapped market there, and a huge SME market. What was the figure I saw recently? Something 80-something% of people in the UK work for businesses of 10 people or less.
Yes.
I mean, the SME market is huge and being incredibly badly served by the telcos who just don't want to go there, the ISPs who just don't want to go there. Mention the word liability and they run away. And you look at the sort of your Netgear router or your this or your that, and they're basically junk. They really are quite poor. And even those like Linksys that sometimes make a bit of an effort, it's pretty cursory, it's pretty thin. And that is a whole explorational space of how are we going to work with Joe Public to make that work? How are we going to work with Joe SME to make this work, who doesn't want to know how this stuff works and doesn't want to learn? And I think the trust word is not spoken enough at all levels of IT. Why should I trust you to do what you're claiming to do? Why should I trust you to have a workable solution? Why should I trust you with my data? Why should I trust you with my business processes? And there's far, far too much arm waving and far too much presumption and not enough deliverables and hard data and consequences. And the trust word for me is the big, big deal between here and 2040. So everything will be determined in its determination of trust in that time frame. Not price, not QoS, not these things. It will simply be one of why should I be having a relationship with you in whatever way, level, form. And we, having looked at so much stuff over the years, so many thousands upon tens and tens of thousands of products over the years, I think it's perfectly reasonable that the vast majority of the consumers of this stuff shouldn't have to give a damn about it.
Yes.
It should just work, it should work reliably, and it should work with their interests at heart. And the reality is, it was fun back in the 90s. We were all like cowboys. We were all going west across the great uncharted plains of IT North America. And we were having a riot, and it was great fun, and it was nerdy and geeky and fab. And today, that just doesn't wash anymore. And in a sense, coming back to your question about how do you recognize whether something is going to work or not, you have to ask yourself the question, if I don't give a damn about this thing, will it still work for me? And most stuff doesn't. And companies are very good at putting a veneer on things. Go and look at, let's take a good example, Office 365, right? They've taken what was a horrendous mess and turned it into something that's, there's an awful lot of sticking plaster and blue tack and glue and bubble gum involved in it, but it does kind of hang together as a platform. Now go and say, I want to go and change the filtering of incoming messaging on Exchange Server. And you suddenly get exposed to sort of quite a nasty reality. A good one recently, I got mail spammed by a PR company who did the cardinal sin of putting 300 email addresses in the CC list. Yeah, not
yes.
the CC list. Yeah,
I see it a lot. Yes.
Okay, it was even more embarrassing because it was for a London college where the email was about the appointment of the new professor of computer security. And his long-winded rant in the email was all about how computer security was huge, important, and that.
Oh dear.
And the PR person had managed to spam most of tech press worldwide on a CC list. And so I thought, surely, inside Office 365, there's going to be a setting which says if there's more than 5 people on the named address list, don't send it.
Yeah, it's obvious. You would have thought so. Yeah.
And I went digging, and I can't find it. I can't find it at all.
Yeah. I mean, Office 3, I know Google Apps does this. If I send an email and say, please find the attachment, it's smart enough to go, by the way, you've not attached anything. Did you really want to send that?
Yeah. And so that's a lot of this sort of smart stuff where, I do understand the problem in this particular case Microsoft has got, that it's trying to build this cloud ecosystem thing, and it's as the old Irish saying is, if you wanted to get there, you wouldn't start from here. But that's what they've got, yeah, and they've done an incredible job of bolting it all together. I'm not knocking it, but is that really what I wanted? Is that really how I want to work? And sometimes you get the temptation. It'd be really nice just to have a Chromebook and a browser.
Of which I do. I have a Chromebook, but that's a conversation.
Really be bothered with all of this, and so this whole thing about there are far more customers, both real and potential, who don't want to learn about this stuff than those that do. And if you consider it as a classic sort of normal distribution curve, looking at it from your direction, you've got the uber nerds down here at the top end, and then you've got the people from the 50% mark downwards who are at some level of disinterest through to abject hostility. Yeah. And IT has kind of gone somewhere up that curve. I really don't think it's, apart from some of the smartphone work, and I would certainly put iOS into this space and some elements of Android, to get near to the middle. And there's a huge untapped space out there of people who just don't want to know about this stuff but need it. Like for example, an IP fortress for their home. Every household in this country that's got an ADSL line needs that. And what proportion of the public do you think actually gives a damn? Or should give a damn? And it's no good sitting here saying, well, you've got to learn what a routing table is, and you've got to know what inbound routes mean and what filtering is, and what was it TCP or was it UDP? And all of this stuff. They just don't care. But what they want to know is that, the smart TV in little Gemma's bedroom, aged 8, is now, for some reason, the camera is active and it's streaming video to Moscow, right? And if you can't do that, if there's no concept of time, and this is different to how it was, something has changed, yeah? If we can't even get that bit right at the most simplistic level, where the hell are we going to go?
I think this is a topic we could talk.
Oh, we could do
at length about. I'm very conscious of your time and mine. I can't let you go without talking about something that's not IT related at all. But it's fascinating. I know you're a married man. Your husband Andre is incredibly successful in his own right. Including a range of pickles.
Well, we have a pickles and condiments company called Man Food.
So I've got to know more about that. And what's it like having 2 successful entrepreneurs in the same household, John?
We've been doing Man Food for about 5 years now, and it all came about because I couldn't buy a decent piccalilli. And so I said to her, I couldn't buy a decent piccalilli worth putting on a plate. It was all mushy and horrible and nuclear yellow and had a horrible bitter aftertaste. So I said to Andre one day, how hard can this be? Which is a really stupid thing to say. And then we he made some, and we had far too much, so we gave it to friends and family, and they came back and said, can we have some more, please? And then I started doing Saturday morning farmers markets at St Ives here and at Ely. And we kind of launched a brand and thought, this is fun and funky. And now we have staff and warehousing and kitchens and outsourced manufacture. And we sell to people like Liberties in London. And I'd have to check where else we are. I think Fortnum & Mason and Selfridges and Ocado and all sort of top farm shop and deli places, and we're exporting to Germany and we're exporting to Switzerland and Moscow. We've just signed a deal with a company in Moscow, and we've sent stuff to New Zealand and Canada, and we have 28 products of pickles, and we've done mad things like take real ale and reduced it onto a spoon into a jelly form and all this sort of madness. And it's great fun. It's just about stopped consuming money now, just about. And we've invested a very healthy six-figure sum into it. But that's what you need to do if you want to bring a product, a range, a brand to market. And hopefully someone's going to come along and say, oh my God, this is fabulous, I need to buy this, and write us an enormous check. And it's been a huge learning experience, obviously, doing the whole thing. Things that we've done right, things that we've done wrong, but you don't know till you try. And it's very easy to sit on the sidelines and say, well, we could have done that, but we didn't. Well, we have actually gone out and tried to do this. So manfood.com or welovemanfood.com, you can buy from us and we'll ship to you directly by glorious courier.
I love it, and I don't think anybody saw that coming at the end of this podcast, which is why...
So to actually answer your question, what's it like? And the answer is, well, truthfully, if you've got two people, Andre's a director of my company and I'm a director of his company and so forth. So dinner and stuff, there is always an element of sort of a dinner and a boardroom discussion as to what we're doing, where we're at, what we have to do. Because during the working day, we're both busy doing our own stuff. But, we email and SMS and all the rest of it. So it's good fun. I would certainly recommend it if you're brave enough or mad enough to want to try and do it. So it's a completely different space for me, and it's great fun and interesting.
I love it.
And you'll sometimes find me in places like, I don't know, top food places or international food exhibitions in Cologne or whatever on our stand, and come along and have a taste.
Lovely. I look forward to it. Look, John, it's been an incredible pleasure for me to spend time with you today. I know this will make you blush. I know we've made you blush a lot of times, but you've genuinely been a tech hero to me all of my career in IT. As a young man, I followed your writing and I aspired to be a consultant like yourself. Now, I'm not so young a man, but I am a consultant and I still aspire to be half as cool.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, please. Thank you very much for the kind words. It really is appreciated. As I said, I've just sort of try and trundle along doing what I do with integrity. And when people ask me an opinion of something, I tell them how it is. And that doesn't mean to say I'm right. There is very rarely right and wrong in this world. But you give an opinion and you have to give it from your heart and you have to give it with clarity. And if that just improves the directions that people are taking, then it's worth doing.
If anybody listening wants to reach out to you to continue this conversation, we've covered a lot of ground here, but how can they find you online? Well,
I'm on LinkedIn, so you'll find me there. Jon@jonhoneyball.com, I think, is on every PCPro column you ever done. Lab@woodleyside.com will get me. It's not hard to find an email address for me. Drop me a mail. Always say hello. Even if it's just to say, I read your column and I think you're talking bollocks. That's still... bracing, but interesting. No, absolutely. Please get in contact, and anyone who wants some help or some ideas or whatever, always happy to talk.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to TubbTalk, the podcast for IT business owners. You can find the show notes and bonus content for this interview, along with dozens of other interviews with IT business leaders, over at www.tubblog.co.uk. If you enjoyed this podcast, then we'd really appreciate you rating and reviewing the show over at iTunes. Every review helps us reach new listeners and helps raise the bar for success in the IT industry. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show as much as we did. Tune in for our next episode when Richard speaks to his latest guest for more valuable insights into the world of business and IT. This episode is sponsored by Ninja RMM, the easiest RMM you will ever use. Ninja focuses on simplifying your life as an MSP or IT professional. Are you moving from a break-fix model to fully manage your assets? Have you already embraced the world of managed services and are looking to expand your portfolio? Well, Ninja's platform combines monitoring, alerting, antivirus, patching, and IT automation, providing your business with a single pane of glass for managing multiple devices across various environments. Visit ninjarmm.com/TubbTalk and become an IT ninja today. And mention you are coming from TubbTalk. Ninja will have a special offer ready for you.